Good afternoon and welcome to the Federal Executive Forum celebrating 19 years of profiling excellence in government IT mission programs. I'm Luke McCormack. During today's show, we will discuss best practices with IT modernization programs and strategies in the federal government. With me on today's show are Bob Costello, Chief Information Officer at CISA, Colonel Nathan Ivan, Acting Director for the Space Force Chief Technology and Innovation Office, U.S. Space Force, Dr. Howard Hayes, Chief Medical Information Officer, Indian Health Services at HHS, Matthew Miller, Chief Architect, Partner Ecosystems, Field CTO Organization, Red Hat, Jim Westorp, Chief Technologist, Sienna Government Solutions, and Ken Gonzalez, Director of Solutions Architecture, Public Sector, Verizon. All right, we are talking about IT modernization. Bob Costello, I'm going to start with you. You've been over there, I think, 3 years. You had, over a decade's worth of technical debt. You've been on an absolute journey trying to get yourself up to sort of level, flat ground and above. I think you're at a point now where you're starting to rise above that. Give us a top line, the state of the state at CISA these days.
Sure, it's good to be here today, Luke. And yeah, it'll actually be 3 years and about 2 weeks. I'll admit there.
Congratulations.
Thank you. In the role. So yeah, you're right. We were picking up from actually probably closer to 15 or almost 20 years of some tech debt. So as you know, and maybe not all your audience knows, CISA was kind of formed of a bunch of different organizations at DHS, as many parts of DHS were when DHS was formed. So we came out of the largest group was called NPPD. We kind of broke out from headquarters about 5 years ago, going on 6 years. So like many parts of DHS, maybe in the 2008 timeframe, if you were to do that back timeline, I had a bunch of IT systems that didn't report to the CIO. Had grown up over 20 years from the formation of DHS or even our predecessor organizations. We inherited when DHS was formed some programs from the DoD that ended up here at CISA, and many of those programs just hadn't been modernized. So we spent the kind of I'm not good at sports analogies, but like the first year is kind of like a rebuilding year. Had a very small office, and then CISA had broken up the CIO, CISO, CTO functions and roles, which can work in some organizations, doesn't work in some parts of the government when all the authorities come through the CIO, which is the way it is at DHS. So we spent some time kind of reforming the units, doing a lot of hiring, getting people the right training. That was kind of year 1 and 2. Going into early year 2, we started building our new environments that we're migrating to today. So that's our big project right now. We're migrating the entire agency to purpose-built environments for CISA. We spent a lot of time building 3 operational cloud environments with our partners at Amazon, Google, and Microsoft. We're migrating our end user devices this year. And then in about the last year and a half, we took over about 50 systems and applications from across the rest of the agency and are now operating them in OCIO. So we went from a pretty small organization when I started, which I wasn't used to coming from larger parts of DHS. And now we're, running the agency's IT. We're part of the operations each day. We're now a 24/7 unit, where before we were mostly just a kind of daytime compliance office. So we've stood up, an operations center, service desk, application and systems monitoring. So it's been a whole kind of journey over about 3 years that's pretty transformational. So where we are in the next, 90 to 120 days is getting everyone migrated to those new environments, which, as everyone on the call knows, is really rough. Yet, I've yet to do an IT migration that didn't have some angry customers or bumps in the road. But we're pretty confident that we're going to be delivering a really model unit or model and enterprise environment for people to kind of emulate against. And we really want CISA's own environments to model the best practices and guidance that CISA itself publishes for the rest of the FSEB and our partners in the state, local, territorial, and tribal governments. So that's kind of where we are right now.
Absolutely, and good catch on not only focusing on the technical debt, but bringing all the skills up and bringing in new skills and upskilling the folks that were there. So, bravo, well done on that effort. Colonel, I know you inherited a lot of technical debt over there at the Space Force and been on your own journey over there. Space Force been around for a moment. Give us a top line on the various activities that are going over there to modernize that environment.
Yeah, thanks, Luke. We're in our fourth year now as a service
Congratulations.
within the Department of the Air Force. We, as one of the two services in the department, by design, a couple things happened, and we did inherit a lot of tech debt. But when we look at our enterprise IT environment, we directly, as a Space Force, contribute to several of Mrs. Goodwine, the Department of the Air Force CIO's lines of effort, cloud adoption, cybersecurity, looking at our workforce and requirements for data and AI. So we directly contribute to those, but by design, we rely on the Air Force for really our enterprise IT and our core services. So when I walked in the Pentagon today, I'm logging on to an Air Force administrative network. The
Right.
Space Force, we're focused on mission networks. And there certainly has been a lot of tech debt that has accumulated over the years. The service is only 4 years old, but the systems that we're operating have been around for quite some time. And so we're working on our mission warfighting systems. We project power through our Space Force bases. And so being able to operate in a domain remotely, it's incredibly important for the information technology and the data to be able to support those operations.
Fantastic. And it's nice that you can get some of that, we'll call it enterprise plumbing, out of the way so that you can really focus on those mission critical environments. And we're looking forward to hearing more about that. Hats off to you all over there at the Space Force. Dr. Hayes, Indian Health Services. I am really looking forward to a state of that environment. Could you first tell us how big is that environment? Maybe just a thumbnail of, give us a framework of the Indian Health Services, and then tell us how you're doing over there as far as modernizing that environment.
So, yeah, thanks for the invitation. So today you're going to hear from me as the Chief Medical Information Officer. So my focus is on the healthcare side of things. My colleague and boss, our CIO, Mitch Thornbrew, is on vacation and asked me to cover this today. So I'm happy to be here, and I appreciate the invitation. So the Indian Health Service is an agency of the Department of Health and Human Services, and we provide healthcare services to American Indian and Alaska Native people across the country. We have a presence in 37 states. And I should have looked it up before we came today. I think the budget for the agency is about $8 billion a year, maybe less. And so it's a small agency because we operate between us and the tribal partners that we work with, operate about 45 hospitals across the country. Many of them are small, but we have a partnership with self-governance tribes. Tribes have the authority under their self-determination to provide the services that the government provides for them on their own through contracts and compacts with the federal government. So there's the Indian Health Service federal side, there's the there's the tribal organizations, and then there's the urban Indian organizations, of which there's about 41 in different urban areas around the country. So we provide those healthcare services, or we provide the funding to the tribes who manage their own systems. So that's a little bit of the background there. And again, my focus as the CMIO is on the technology that supports healthcare delivery. in those areas. So, but we also, as our Office of Information Technology, also provides the technology infrastructure, which is the network environments and the operating systems for the computer systems that are operating there, and a lot of technical support to other parts of the agency that do the things that a federal agency has to do, human resources and contracting and all those things. But our principal initiative right now that we're in the middle of, and I'm glad somebody mentioned technical debt, because we have had electronic systems supporting healthcare since beginning in the late 60s, early 70s.
Wow.
And the system that we use now was launched in 1984, and we are still using the same technology that we launched in 1984. So GAO has described this as the oldest critical information system in use in the federal government. And so we are actively and busily moving away from that to, instead of being a developer of a homegrown electronic medical record system, which we share a lot of that with the VA, and as you know, they're also doing a modernization effort. We are in the early stages of moving away to a commercially available electronic health record system. We probably will talk more about that during this conversation.
Wow, it sounds like you are on quite a journey. 40-year-old environment there. That's that might take the cake there. I'm not sure. So I appreciate that, and looking forward to hearing about the various activities underway there. Matt, how about at Red Hat? You all are striped across all these various agencies. What do you find yourself doing as the field CTO organization?
Yeah, no, it's a very big question that a lot of our customers are coming to us with. And for those who don't know Red Hat, we're the world's largest purveyor of open source IT software and solutions. We look at, open source is driving both modernization and innovation. Like, as you said, we're across, all segments of the government. That's all 16 cabinet level agencies across all 50 states, and that 90% of the Fortune 500. We're looking at it is to go beyond things like open source and open standards into concepts that were touched on a little about, like open data and open AI models. This is where we see that our customers are asking us to go, because we're looking at things like generative AI and augmented AI is allowing organizations breathing room to close the technical debt. We think this is one of those important parts because, modernization is a journey, and going through and utilizing these new technologies in this way goes through and brings in newer people into those areas, allows them to understand what's specifically happening while they're taking people through the journey to go into new sets of modern systems.
Appreciate all the help that you're doing across the interagency to help these folks unlock these capabilities. Jim, Sienna, you all are known for certain types of technologies. Why don't you give us a sort of a top line of who Sienna is, what they do, and then how you're helping these government clients unlock some of this technology capability so that they can perform their missions.
Yeah, sure. I'm glad to be here, Luke. Yeah, so, Sienna's been around 25 plus years, and, we come at the IT modernization problem from the infrastructure side. So the actual interconnectivity between the buildings across the US and international, really making sure that the high-speed interconnections between all of the major data centers and enterprise points has the connectivity that it needs. And our place in the network is typically supplying the likes of Verizon with the telecommunications equipment that they use to provide services. So Verizon, AT&T, and actually some of the big nowadays, the big content service providers, Google, Facebook, et cetera. Even even with the Red Hats of the world, we get involved in basically providing the network underpinnings. You don't typically see Sienna, but anytime you pick up the phone or you're sending an email, very likely your data is traversing a Sienna piece of equipment at some point. And so, in the modernization journey, the things that we're doing is we're really trying to make the network kind of disappear from the user's perspective. All of the carriers and the service providers, of course, know of us and deal with our equipment. But from a user perspective, we tend to disappear, and that's kind of what we want to do. Our mission is to make sure that the network itself is not an impediment to people's mission. And in fact, as networks become more and more critical to various missions, Space Force, the medical, and you need to transfer all the data, access information from the various sensors. It's more and more, the network becomes more and more critical and more of a force multiplier, really, to enable these agencies to complete their missions. And as such, we find data is almost, I think, 20%, 30% year over year increases that we're seeing. We're seeing baseline capacities in the core of the networks where we typically operate, and even towards the edge. We've helped major agencies. Now, this goes over the last decade or more, but they've been moving from relatively low speed services, 10 gig or so, which is still a lot for an individual user, but for an actual carrier, that's not that much, into hundreds of gigs and even terabits. So the capacities of the networks have had to scale dramatically, and Sienna has been at the forefront of enabling that to happen. And as agencies have been moving more to the cloud, there's a whole set of upgrades that are happening to enable the different agencies to do that upgrade and to migrate from their own data centers to cloud-hosted data centers. So there's a whole set of connectivity that we've had to put together. And even, at the mission side, and we've talked about the tech debt that is involved in a lot of these networks, there is still, even though upgrades have been going on for decades, some places not, other places, yes.
Yeah.
Particularly in the DoD space, there is a tremendous amount of tech debt that still remains, and fairly old legacy, connectivity and telecom equipment that you still need to operate with. So one of the things we do to help modernization as well is be able to support legacy formats and transmission protocols, so that when you're doing a migration, you don't actually have to shut everything down. It's not a cut. You basically you can support both modern Ethernet type technologies and older SONET SDH, to throw out a couple acronyms. But it's very important to support both older and newer protocols and be able to provide a migration path, and that's one of the things that we do as well.
Very much the backhaul of the backhaul, if you will, and we really appreciate all the work there. I think about things like COVID-19 and the weight that we put on these networks instantaneously, and you all were able to really deliver. So we certainly appreciate that. We're going to take a break, and we'll be right back. You're listening to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Network. Welcome back to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Network. We're talking about IT modernization transformation, giving a top line. Ken, we're going to go over to you at Verizon. Just give us the state of the state as the Director of Solutions Architecture. What are you seeing? What are you finding your organization doing out there to help these environments modernize?
First, thank you for having me again, Luke. It's a pleasure to be here.
Same.
One of the things that I love about my job is the ability to actually see multiple sides of the government and even commercial. In other words, transformation is different for every agency. Every journey is different. Every journey has a different pace. As agencies have different sides, different missions, you cannot basically assume that everybody will use the same. So the cornerstone of all this transformation, though, has something common, and that is the network is the evolution platform. In other words, every one of those applications, every one of those new traffic flows have to rely on a way to get from point A to point B. And at Verizon, we are cognizant of the fact that there are also different personas. We had the assumptions that before we were connecting people, but today we're connecting peoples with IoT devices, sensors, drones, and people are no longer bound to a physical location. People go mobile. People have to evolve the way that they work and be in a world where everything has to be depending on what they're doing and when they need it and how they react to different changing situations, right? So the connectivity of that is critical. But in Verizon, we are not bound only as a provider of connectivity. We have to provide that same connectivity with a secure layer. We have to keep security in mind. How everything is changing today and the way things are connected. We also have to consider how the applications are evolving. Some applications are moving to the cloud. Some applications are old and have to be transformed before they move to the cloud. How do you create an environment where you can transform without leaving no user behind, without isolating a part of your business? So at the end of the day, it's about enabling the missions of every one of the agencies we had the pleasure to work with so that they can serve their citizens. And that's what we do at Verizon.
We really do appreciate all the best efforts that you all are doing to enable those capabilities. Well, we're going to roll into some specific examples. Colonel, I'm going to start with you. You snap off of the Air Force 4 years ago, a lot of systems that are decades old, no doubt, and an exploding capability that's out there. I think about the commercialization of space, et cetera. A lot of moving parts. You want to give us an example of where you're really making some progress here?
Sure, Luke. Yeah, the tech debt and some of the old systems. I mean, there are still some sensors out there that are operating on like 4,800 baud.
Wow. Yeah. And I know some of these
right?
satellites, were launched in the 60s and, just decades old of capability out there.
Yeah. So one of the examples of an effort that we're currently working is the Integrated Operations Network, ION. Again, Space Force focused on our mission network. So this is about starting focused, but a scalable solution to address some of that tech debt. So how do we leverage hybrid cloud, edge processing, things like attribute-based controls, and really just to get the right data to the right decision makers and the right operators at the right time. Operationally relevant timelines from a military perspective. So we've started off with ION. That is progressing well. We're also partnering with the Air Force on things like modernizing our voice communications. I mentioned we've got a lot of older circuits that we're starting to transition off of. So we're still in the process of going from serial to modern IP in some cases. So those are some of the things that we're focusing on right now.
Yeah, man, I heard 4,800 baud. I haven't heard that bit rate in quite some time. So rather impressive and a little scary. So hats off to all the hard work going on over there. Matt, how about at Red Hat? You talked about various agencies, all the various agencies that you're working with. You want to give us an example of maybe one or two where you're really focusing on helping them increase their capabilities?
Yeah, no, and there are a lot of success stories within government at Red Hat, and I don't always do all those people justice and all things they're doing. So I'm going to tell you my own personal story. I had a customer-facing challenges of a aging API management solution. For those who don't understand the tech jargon, it's just how two interconnected systems talk to each other. With the help of a trusted partner, the customer is able to modernize their system into something more secure, more agile, and they did that within the premise of about 100 days running on top of our platforms and frameworks. Like the net is they were able to lower some subscription costs, achieve zero downtime API deployments, and increase about 20% their response times compared to what they were doing in the legacy product. And while most people would consider that the success, coming from the mechanics of the partner ecosystem, we look at that continued long-term relationship. Red Hat's been around for about 30 years as really going through as being part of that modernization journey. For us, it's going through and driving new additional value each day and allowing our customers to not think about what's happening on the underside of the platforms and frameworks and focus on that upper level value.
Fantastic, and we really do appreciate that and highlighting that example. Bob Costello, you've been at it, as you described, 3 years now. I know that you've been doing some work snapping off the mothership. I heard purpose-built. You want to give us an example or two of some things that you're working on to really modernize the CISA environment over there?
Sure. Although it's fun hearing Colonel Ivan talk about stuff. I was a very young airman at Schriever Air Force Base, one of my first assignments, and it's really great to hear what's going on over there. And I think I should always just start with the great appreciation I have for the Air Force and now the Space Force for taking someone that wasn't a super great troop and making them a great troop. Hats off to the work they're doing there. So a lot of our work here is focused again, and my focus back to the Colonel's point is on those mission systems. So part of the work here is as you know, Luke, my biggest customer is a cybersecurity division. So that is the side of CISA that is the mission focus and working to protect the federal civilian executive branch, work with our partners in industry, both public and private sector, critical infrastructure partners. So in some cases, they will continue to build their mission systems, much like Colonel Ivan's doing in the Space Force, where I am now taking on for them. It's kind of take some of the noise off. Let me run your help desk. Let me deploy your equipment. Let me provide an administrative network. Let me do all these things that you shouldn't have to do as a mission operator.
Bingo.
And yeah, exactly. So, let me give you your mobile solutions, your operating environments, and you just deploy, run your missions. For the rest of CISA, we actually do run their mission systems. So we have two other kind of verticals on our mission sets. That's the infrastructure security division that runs infrastructure security. We can think of that as physical security of sites, in the country, as well as chemical security. The Office of Bombing Prevention is there, school safety. So we're now running those mission systems, and then we partner with the Emergency Communications Division and the National Risk Management Center to take on a lot of their work and kind of run their systems. So what we're concentrating on right now is kind of twofold. How do I strike that balance with our biggest kind of mission group, the cybersecurity division, so that we're both achieving our goals? I have certain things I have to do as the CIO, and at DHS, the only authorizing officials are the CIOs. So we work very closely with them on their systems, and then modernizing some of these old systems. But most importantly, you and I spent most of our careers here at DHS on the law enforcement and inspectional side, whether it was CBP, the Legacy Customs Service, ICE, INS, and so our goals there were, what officer safety, what do we have to do to ensure that they could access their systems, query people, cargo, other things. Here, it's a little bit different, but I think I was uniquely kind of set up after, trial by fire at ICE and CBP. I have cyber operators here. So I have a very highly technical workforce. While we're a small agency, we have some of the best cyber minds in the country, and I would argue in the world. So I have to have a very sharp focus on certain things that we provide, and then strike that kind of balance of, the systems I provide have to kind of meet the unique needs of people that are running cyber operations. So it's interesting, and that's kind of where our focus is right now: modernizing legacy systems, deploying administrative systems that allow people to do their work. And then kind of this consolidation of IT systems. Like, we had a lot of systems doing the same thing, yet I don't need 4 separate systems doing geospatial. I
Absolutely.
need one system that
Absolutely.
all the analysts can access from across different
Mhm.
missions.
Fantastic update there, and a lot of great work going on there. We really do appreciate the cleanup and the transformation going on over at CISA is really outstanding. Jim, how about at Sienna? You want to give us a specific example? I know you all are sort of the backhaul of the backhaul, and no doubt there's some specific examples where you all have been able to really, again, unlock these capabilities.
Yeah, sure. So I'll give you two examples, one towards the edge of the network and one, kind of in the core. And, again, we talked a fair bit about tech debt, and a lot of the DoD infrastructure, base infrastructure, actually even, in the Space Force areas, there's a lot of equipment that's been in place for decades. I mean, we heard about back in the 80s. We don't run into stuff that's quite that old, but actually, 30-year-old stuff is not at all uncommon. And actually, some of the sensors and some of the infrastructure still aren't able to be replaced yet, though they still want to be able to run over modern, high capacity infrastructure. So how do you to continue to maintain some of these older systems that are multiple decades old, that use older protocols, and you want to be able to carry that data, but you don't want to maintain all the old infrastructure from end to end. So what you want to be able to do is at least modernize the transport side of the infrastructure and the carriage of the data while still supporting your edge devices. And so we have the capability of still taking in information from the older protocols and the older sensors and older information generation equipment, and being able to translate those protocols to modern Ethernet type technologies and provide an infrastructure that's 10, maybe even 100 times more capable from a speed perspective, while still supporting those legacy platforms that you can't get rid of because they're still mission critical. But while being able to support growth on the more modern platforms. So you get a modern infrastructure that can support all of your new services while still supporting some of your old ones, giving yourself time actually to migrate. So to provide a graceful modernization to a infrastructure that has much higher capacity. And then if we look in the core of the networks, which is where the typically the high capacity data exists. High capacity used to mean like 10 gig, which sounds like a lot, and it still is a lot to an individual user, but in the core, modern networks have moved way beyond that. But we've been able to support the upgrade of the core infrastructure from, actually over 100 times. So, wasn't too long ago, 10 gig was relatively common. Now actually what's common is 100 gig, so 10 times that.
Yep.
And within the next year, there's going to be terabits. So, it's a factor of 100. And so if that, which sounds like, how could we use all that? But if you look at what folks are doing, actually across the network, both commercially and within the government, there is so much information from video and high definition sensors. Actually, I think Ken was talking about, moving from people to people to machine, all the AI and the training data, vast amounts of data that really needs to be interconnected and exchanged between these data centers. And without these super high capacity highways, which we've enabled, you can't do it. So it's a whole new class of capabilities really that are enabled.
Absolutely super high bandwidth capabilities. The more bandwidth you give them, the more they'll consume. No doubt about that. We really appreciate it. Dr. Hayes, you were speaking about some very unique challenges there. And even though they're small hospitals, they're still hospitals. And I'm sure they're complex. So you want to give us an example of an activity, a program, a project that you're working on there that are helping the Indian Health Service?
So, the interesting thing about the things I'm hearing, again, I'm not as technical as a lot of these people are, but we do provide technical infrastructure to the agency and to some of the tribes that choose to use the services that we provide. We've been doing a lot to improve the cybersecurity infrastructure, the Zero Trust framework. Have been upgrading to Microsoft 365, cloud services, that sort of thing. The interesting situation that we are in, of course, is that we are very rural, and we have areas of the country that have, there's some places that are still on a couple of T1 lines, as opposed to having the kind of connectivity that is being described on this call. So when we are trying to centralize and standardize a lot of the work that we're doing, one of those dependencies is connectivity, because for example, our electronic medical record system, which is currently deployed at each individual facility on a local access network, they certainly do have connectivity for health information exchange and that sort of thing, but it's not that they're able to function through a LAN for the most part. As we move to a central enterprise electronic medical record system and the other enterprise systems that we are implementing, that dependency on connectivity is really going to be a rate limiter, if you will, in some of the locations. But the common theme that you'll hear at Indian Health Service is that standardization and bringing that management of these systems together. So we have initiatives to centralize our HR system to so that everybody's not doing things their own way in the field. And again, we did a credentialing system. Credentialing is where you make sure that the providers at your facilities are qualified to do the work that they do. And that was done locally in the past. And a few years ago, we centralized that so that we have a common view of our clinical providers and their backgrounds and their qualifications and that sort of thing. So if they move to another facility, it's a lot easier to get them privileged to do that work at that facility. But the big thing that we're doing right now is the enterprise EHR, and that is transformational. But we can probably talk more about that.
Sure, very primitive environment there that you're modernizing off of. Ken, how about at Verizon, a specific example that you'd like to highlight?
Sure. I'm gonna go with two very quick. The first one is related to FAA fence, and that is Verizon having the opportunity to design and implement 3 separate mission critical networks, and this mission critical network have to be secured, and they are basically carrying that, and will be carrying the traffic that what we rely on when we board a plane on anything that is on the air right now. And another example, which is a little bit outside the network, has to do with Postal Service, and that is the transformation journey that we have worked with them for the telephony platform, which serves over 200,000 users today, and has a myriad of different kinds of users, anything from a person sitting at a computer and using it as a phone, or somebody having a hard phone, or different paging systems and old legacy environments, all the way to the contact center, who is in the midst of being migrated right now from a premise base into the cloud, and how all those flows have to move from a traditional traffic flow of the network that goes to the data center, now flowing to the cloud without absolutely impacting the way that users and the citizens who call the agency can notice that. And we're doing that dynamically, and we're doing that very, very, very securely as well.
Extremely impressive, and mad respect for that organization. If you think of the footprint that they have out there in every single tiny town in America, it's certainly very impressive. We really appreciate the efforts here and the comments. We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back. You're listening to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Network. Welcome back to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Network. We're talking about IT transformation, modernization. We're talking about priorities specifically now. Bob, number one priority for you at CISA for the remaining of this year?
Well, as you know, we kind of live on 2 years, the fiscal year, the calendar year.
Of
So
course.
as we start to
We'll go
work,
with the calendar year. How about that?
yeah, my New Year's is 1 October. But first and foremost, it's our people. Taking care of our people. It's a massive, massive, massive year of transition for my office. Also a very, very busy year for CISA with our various missions from elections to cyber to infrastructure, risk management. It's very, very busy right now. So my first and foremost priority is taking care of our people, growing our people, making sure they get time off, the training they need. And then, as I think all leaders should be, succession planning, making sure we're getting the next generation ready, making sure we're taking care of the troops there. We actually just finished probably one of the most outstanding intern cycles that we've ever had here, or even in my career at DHS. So just we had an amazing group of people over here at CISA and up at the department. And as we finish up with them, I'm just really reinvigorated this week after spending some real time with them to kind of see this next generation of feds that will be starting out, their career and really committed to public service. So that's kind of my priority, number one priority right now.
Fantastic. And hats off to the transformation that you've done over there over the last 3 years. It's been impressive to watch it happen. Colonel, how about at the Space Force? Top priority for you as you focus on the remaining time in 2024 here?
Yeah, we're focused on building partnerships. You heard it in the National Defense Strategy. You saw the Space Force release our commercial partnership strategy back in April. And from a network and IT standpoint, right, we're looking, especially for the Space Force, we're looking both from the ground all the way to space. So we're looking at both on ground, the data links, and in space, right? So what are the things that the commercial sector can provide? What level of mission assurance to be able to accomplish our mission are available? And then how do we communicate what's required? So we're continuing to work. We just recently completed work on a strategic requirements document that kind of outlines at the highest level what the digital services ecosystem looks like for the Space Force. And then we're continuing to break that down into the pieces and parts to be able to communicate what our requirements are to meet those levels of mission assurance. So partnerships is where we're focused on our ability to communicate with our partners.
Hats off to the U.S. Space Force. Appreciate all the efforts there. Dr. Hayes, you have a lot of things going on over there. For the remainder of 2024, what's the focus at this point? What are you going to absolutely need to get done by 2024?
Well, we're in the middle of our Health IT Modernization initiative is a 10+ year project, and we're in about the second, early parts of that. And so our priority in the near term is getting the necessary staffing in place so that we can begin the enterprise system build after the first of the year. And that's going to be a major project over a course of maybe 9+ months to build the enterprise instance of the cloud-hosted electronic medical record system. We're also identifying the first pilot sites that will be implemented probably in 2026 to do the initial rollout and basically test everything. We'll do testing before we actually expose the patients to our new EHR, but there will be a lot of work coming next year. And so if you're focused on the priorities for this year, it's getting the people ready and getting the just having our feet under us to begin this rather intensive work in 2025 to build this system that we've acquired.
Sounds like you've really set the table with getting the contract in place, getting the vendor on board, now you're staffing up
Yep.
to start really going into full execution. So hats off to you all on that journey that you're on. All right. Well, we would love to have more time, but we never do. But we certainly always want to wrap it up with this last question. And it's about sort of painting a picture of the future. We don't like to go out more than 2 to 3 years, but we do like to focus on that horizon and just get a glimpse of what it's going to look like 2 to 3 years from now. Ken, you all are working on a lot of stuff over there at Verizon. You've got demand signals coming in. You've got stuff coming out of the Petri dish going into production. What do you feel like you'll be focusing your attention on 2 to 3 years from now?
Thanks for the question. That's a great one. From the technology side, two pieces, AI and quantum. And AI as how it impacts the network and how it will benefit each one of our mission owners. And why I say that is, as we are putting more intelligent systems in our networks, we have more data. That data has exploded. It's not just the data that is being transmitted, but it's how much data is being created out of the systems. As humans, we have limitations on our ability to process that data as quickly as possible. So the question that every one of the of our mission owners have is, how do I catalog and take that data into a meaningful information that is actionable? In other words, how can I get my network smarter and automate some of these flows where the network can react to certain conditions? And that is still something that is being worked at, being developed. Some of our mission owners are trying to still catalog their network. Some of them are a little bit more advanced in that journey. And then with the advent of quantum, what does that mean? Not just from the perspective of being able to secure our data, but also being able to defend the data that is coming or that is being attacked using quantum systems today. And from the perspective of what we do, we're really trying to go with the concept of network as a service. And that is, if we are able to reduce the burden where applicable, because not every agency is capable of doing this because of regulations, right? We would like to remove some of the problems that are caused today by aging technologies, because the agency is in charge of having to deal with the life cycle of the equipment, the software, and everything that comes in between. So if we are able to help our mission owners with a model in which we take care of that, and you handle your mission. In other words, we handle the network, we handle the application, we take care of the cycle and all that. What it means is that you will have more ability to focus on your mission, and we can do that better than anybody, and we can leverage everything that is being done today at commercial and interagency. So that's where we're focusing on the next 2 to 5 years.
Fantastic. So I take all that off the plate so that they can focus on the higher order activities. Jim,
right.
how about at Sienna? You talked about just mountains of consuming bandwidth, and I'm sure 2 to 3 years from now, it's gonna. I can't even imagine the rates that you're going to be focusing on. And I know you all built some sophisticated gear to make sure that capability keeps coming. What's the plan there 2 to 3 years from now? What are you all thinking about?
Yeah, we've been on a relatively continuous journey of increasing capacity, increasing automation, increasing the intelligence of the network to support all of these, next generation missions and capabilities. And that's going to continue. We're actually on the cusp of a transition of technology. We're moving to a new generation of transmission gear, which is going to support terabit class transport on a per wavelength basis. So we're, pretty much every few years we double or quadruple the amount of capacity that we're able to support in the network. And so we're going through that transition now. So in a couple of years, that's going to be, mature and out generally available to our network service providers and some of our customers. With the size and capacity of these networks, there's actually a fair bit of complexity to manage as well. So it's key to have next levels of automation, and so you can provide some of the network as a service capabilities We need to have intelligence and automation in the networks, and there's a new generation of software controls that's coming, and that we want to be able to support. And lastly, we actually expect to be taking some of these new technologies and helping our mission partners and our network service providers roll that out into the network so it's actually available to the users. So basically, a new generation in technology is begetting a new set of IT modernization, and we're starting to lay the groundwork for that, and we expect it to be out and in widespread use.
Appreciate the resiliency on those high-speed networks as well, and no doubt the federal customers will consume every bit of it. Matt, how about at Red Hat? Focus for Red Hat and your organization 2 years, 3 years from now.
So it's definitely a very big question, and I'm going to tell you, what I'm working towards and how that aligns with Red Hat. So, my focus is to help customers achieve what we call digital sovereignty through a concept of repeatability and embracing these new sets of intelligent applications, much like they started the journey to, through like something like DevSecOps, and really for our government customers, that larger set focus on sustainability, because that kind of aligns with the power requirements that were talked about earlier with contending with the focus of the edge. It's a very interesting time, just in the world of digital sovereignty. You see things within the EU like the Digital Operational Resiliency Act, or DORA, forcing organizations from move to one cloud to another to go through and get global resiliency. I like to say that we came from a concept of centralized systems. We moved through this concept of distributed systems. Then we moved back to centrally distributed systems. And really, really, what I'm focused toward is how do I get somebody to distributed systems? And I think that aligns with what we consider a hybrid cloud approach. And like the way that AI is fitting in is going through and looking at it at the fact that the edge, where you have these low sets of connectivity, you can bring models to the edge, because we're no longer just like within the last year needing this exotic hardware to be able to run these models and serve them in areas which you just don't have the connectivity. So, going through and like moving people towards that mechanic of digital sovereignty is going to go through and align with those edge use cases to get distributed capabilities.
Distributed. We really do appreciate that. And we know there are environments that don't have a level of sophistication as far as connectivity. Indian Health Services being one of them. Dr. Hayes, 2 to 3 years from now, it sounds like you'll be halfway into your major modernization program. What do you expect to see? What's it going to look like for a doctor out in one of these hospitals, rural hospitals? What can they expect to see 2 to 3 years from now?
Well, again, as I mentioned earlier, and you've acknowledged, this is a multi-year program, and so the work that we're doing right now to build the system and get it into our pilot sites, probably in 3 years we'll have completed the implementation in pilot sites, and maybe being prepared to roll out our first cohort implementations. Cohort will be a small number of sites, and we're going to do that on a repetitive basis until we're done, and that's very dependent on things like funding and the success of how we're doing it. We're going to take a very deliberate and intentional approach to this. But for those sites that implement it, we expect to see much better interoperability with. We refer a lot of patients into the private sector. We share patients with the VA, that sort of thing. And so we have to have that communication between the providers of care for our patients, both within our facilities, between our facilities, because we do share patients with each other, and then, of course, with the private sector, academia, and military health system and VA. So the main thing, besides the functional improvements that will be brought by a more robust EHR than we're able to provide now, is that visibility into the total patient health status, because you're seeing information for care that they've received elsewhere, and you refer them to a private sector person, and they receive that referral and they provide the care, and you get the information back so that you can continue the optimal care of that person. So we're gonna be really seeing the beginnings of that in the time frame that you've outlined here in the next 2 or 3 years.
Well, certainly looking forward to that, and hats off to all the very hard work you're doing in those what no doubt are some primitive environments. They're not easy to implement those types of capabilities. Colonel,
Primitive
fast
is a little
forward.
bit, it's a little bit. I think the technology, the infrastructure that we're working in is challenging, but the healthcare that we deliver is actually quite good, and despite the technical challenges or the geographic challenges that we have. So, thanks.
Bravo to the team out there that are delivering those capabilities. Colonel, how about at the Space Force? Fast forward 2 to 3 years from now, you've locked down these partnerships. You're 7 years old at that point. Let's say, what do you expect to be focusing your attention on at that point? What is it going to look like, the level of maturity? How far along are you going to be on this technical debt journey you're on?
Yeah, Luke, I think in the next 2 to 3 years, some of the things I expect to see, improved resilience in that classified network infrastructure to support the missions that I talked about earlier. I think we'll see a greater integration of artificial intelligence. And for us, that's both a technology and a people issue. And so we expect to be partway through the journey of both integrating AI, continued integration of AI into the mission systems, but also the responsible AI tenets and just the Guardian and Joint Warfighter trust in using those systems. Really underpinning all of this, I expect to see continued investment in our enterprise infrastructure. Sometimes it's very hard to tell the difference between a mission system and an enterprise system, and oftentimes they share the same underlying infrastructure. So I think there will be movement there. And then I think one of the key things that we'll see in the next couple of years, we're incorporating cybersecurity into our space systems in the design phase, right? So partnering with the acquisition community. And that, in the future, that's going to be more than did you meet the requirement? It's did you design and build it to be operated and defended, right? Are we taking the threat into account so that the system is ready from a cybersecurity perspective, but also meant to be defended by Guardians in that mission based on the threats we expect to see in the next 2 to 3 years. So again, partnership theme there between the acquisition, the operational community, and the cybersecurity community for our space systems in the future.
Really looking forward to that. Secure by design, big mantra of CISA, no question about that. So appreciate it, Bob. 2 to 3 years from now, I know Bob's going to do what Bob does, and you're going to have a lot of this, a lot of this environment well underway, secured, modernized, etc. What do you expect to see 2 to 3 years from now? Will you be running all the business systems at that point? Is that the expectation, or where do you think you're going to be?
Well, I think so. So we largely are now running, the business systems, and I think to the Colonel's point, like a lot of these systems share the same underlying infrastructure, but also more importantly, what is a mission system is defined by the operator who's doing the role. So I consider everyone an operator in the mission that they do. While it may be different in the cybersecurity division, if the CFO's office can't access their systems and pay people, believe me, you're going to have a big problem. So to those people running payroll, their mission systems are the payroll systems and the HR systems and the other things. So, I'm really, really focused on changing this office because it wasn't before, 4 years ago, a customer focused and operator focused organization. And that's my first priority. I think the second thing you mentioned, I do think that the time of the 5-year strategic plan is kind of over in IT. And Director Easterly has really led the entire agency in that. We have a 2-year plan. We really work things off. In my office, we kind of just chip away at things till they get done. I think a lot of these journeys are never done. Much like everyone else, AI is a huge focus for us, both on the workforce area on it, how we use it responsibly and safely. And that's a partnership that I share with the Chief Privacy Officer here at CISA. We have a extremely good working relationship to ensure that we're doing things right. So I think those are two of the big things. And I'd say that the number one thing that we hope to get through all our transformation efforts that are really, you know, they are in high gear right now. You know, we're on the nights, the weekends,
Yep.
you know, the emotional meetings where we don't think we can get this done, and maybe we'll all share, you know, 12 pizzas and we decide we can get it done. You know, breaking down those silos between different groups, you know, people can share information that they couldn't before. And that happens in a lot of agencies. You know, stuff is built up, you know, you're formed from a bunch of different agencies or organizations. So that's our real goal, is making sure that people can access the data they need to help make the decisions required of us to fulfill our mission.
You're doing what Bob does, which is kicking ass and delivering outstanding capabilities to those operators. And
Thank you,
really
Luke.
do appreciate it. Really appreciate everybody's time today for taking their time out of their busy schedules to join us for the program. I'd like to thank all the sponsors for supporting us on this show. I'd like to thank the good people here at Federal News Network that make this program so successful and enjoyable. And most of all, I'd like to thank you, the listening audience, that tune in every month. You're listening to the Federal Executive Forum, part of the Federal News Network.